mute yourself. This will be for better transmission. And then also, if you get bumped off for some reason, you can just try to rejoin. If for some reason you experience technical difficulties rejoining Zoom, we are live streaming on Facebook. You just need to log on Wonderland's Facebook page, and it will have instructions for you to join us via Facebook. Let me see. Some of you who did the register, or most of you who did registration online, had the opportunity to submit questions. Please bear with Molly, as many of these questions that were submitted will be answered with Molly's presentation. So we also have devoted some time at the end of her presentation to answer the questions. You are also free to submit questions via the message here on Zoom, and I will be monitoring the messages. So if things come up while she's going through her discussion, just let us know and you can submit your questions. So let me introduce our speaker tonight, Miss Molly Shayo. Molly graduated from Southwest University in Georgetown, Texas, with a degree in English. She is certified in assistance to infancy, that's birth to 3 years old, through the Association Montessori International, and she's had this certification since 2006. After working in corporate public affairs for many years, Molly was in the classroom at Community Montessori in Georgetown, and then later on in Waypoint Montessori in Colleyville. Molly is currently a course assistant each summer for the AMI Assistance to Infancy course at the Montessori Institute of North Texas in Dallas, and is part of the AMI's Training of Trainers program. So she's training to be a teacher of 0 to 3. Her husband is a high school band director, and they have 3 daughters. She is currently our head of school at the Valley Ranch location. Now, I have a special connection with Molly. My personal connection with Molly stems from being colleagues with her at Waypoint Montessori, where I was a teacher for over 15 years. I received toddlers from her class who were so wonderful, and which inspired me actually to pursue the 0 to 3 training for myself. And of course, I had the privilege of working with her daughter, Evelyn, who will show you a photo later on at the end of her presentation. With that, I would like to turn over our webinar to Molly. Molly, good evening.
Hello, everybody. I'm so glad to see you here. Thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to join us for this very interesting and important topic. I see a lot of folks are here logged onto the webinar, which does not surprise me one bit. I'm going to share my screen. I have a little bit of a PowerPoint presentation here that's going to guide us through this discussion. So it's not surprising that there are so many people on, because a lot of families find toileting to be a big challenge as they're raising their young children. So I don't want to waste any of our precious time together. I'll get right to it. In this talk, we're going to explore why humans toilet the way we do, how children biologically develop abilities for toileting, and then of course, in the Montessori pedagogy, how we create both the physical environment that is most conducive to toilet learning, and also how to approach the process from a psychological and personality perspective with your child in an effort to avoid those power struggles that we don't enjoy so much. Notice I didn't say eliminate power struggles, just trying to avoid them as much as possible. Like Teresa said, we have a lot of information to cover. Hopefully this will answer a lot of the questions that I saw people had submitted in the Google form, but there will be some questions that we can address at the end. If you have a question that comes up during the presentation, hopefully you can pop it into the chat, and Teresa's going to collect those and then give them to me when we're all finished. So I appreciate again you being here, and let's get started. So we're going to go back in time first, way back in time, back to human evolution. Humans have associated human waste with danger from the time when we first existed on this planet. Even animals know not to defecate. You'll notice that we're going to use a lot of scientific terms, so hopefully that doesn't offend anybody. They knew to defecate, to take their urine and their feces and produce those products away from their living quarters. They carry germs, simple as that. So animals and primitive humans all know that that needs to happen away from where we live. So over time, humans with their wonderful frontal lobes have developed various systems that make it easier and more efficient to do that. Now, this is an ancient Roman sewer. This was one of the first, this is anyway in the archaeological record, one of the first human invented sewer systems. There was a channel of water underneath those seating arrangements that would hold water and carry the feces and the urine away from town so that people could be healthier. Then it was about in the 1700s when the first mechanical flushing toilets were invented. These were usually made of porcelain and had some kind of water tank above them that allowed gravity to assist in the flushing away of urine and bowel movements to keep them away from people's houses. And then, of course, nowadays there's all kinds of exciting technology. I'm not sure exactly what's happening here with this remote controlled toilet, but we've got automatic flushing toilets that we see in a lot of public restrooms. And then this toilet obviously is very special and does some really interesting things. I'm not sure exactly what, but I'm sure they're really great. Basically, for a very, very long time, humans have used modern sanitation as basically a medical advance that keeps us safe and keeps us healthy. So I find when talking about a subject like toileting, it's really important to try to remove any emotional components to this topic. So one of the ways that we can do that is by having a very practical definition of what toileting is. So here's a definition right here. It is the elimination of human biological waste in a particular location at a particular time. And it's for the purpose of hygiene and safety. And that's really it. Nothing more than that, nothing less than that. It's not something that needs to be a point of strife or stress in your life or your child's life. And hopefully through our talk today, we will help get you to that place where this is not such a stressful or emotional topic to discuss. And the way we're going to start that is by talking about a little bit of biology. So bear with me. Some of this, it may be seem like, wow, this is a lot of information, but I'm going to bring it back to toileting here momentarily. So basically, the ability to voluntarily hold elimination or to release it requires a number of systems in the human body, and that includes the organs of the digestive system, the muscular system that includes the muscles of the bladder and the bowels, as well as the muscles of the sphincters that hold the holes open or closed when eliminating urine or feces. And then, of course, the nervous system, and that includes the spine and several different areas of the brain. Now, this is an illustration of a nerve cell, and there's a very important part of this nerve cell that we need to talk about that's really crucial to the ability of a child to voluntarily use the toilet. And that is this right here. Now, this blue line is the axon. It is a very important part of the nerve cell that connects it to the next nerve cell, and nerve cells connect to each other in long chains. Now, if you can think about the cord that connects your phone to the wall when it's charging, there is a layer of insulation on the outside of that cord that keeps the electricity traveling in the wires that connect to your phone. Now, in much the same way, there is a substance, you can kind of see it, it's coating that axon, and it's called myelin. And that myelin is what allows the electric impulses that travel along the nerve cells to get from place to place without going off in strange directions. So basically, that myelin allows the brain to talk to the muscles of the body and for the body to send messages back to the brain. Now, why is this important for toileting? because children actually are not born with very much myelin at all. In fact, they really just have some myelin in their brains and some around the nerve cells that are near the mouth. And that allows them to voluntarily choose to suck, to feed themselves, to eat. Now, over time, throughout about the first year of life, they build up more and more myelin and they coat more and more of their nerve cells with this myelin, allowing information to travel from the brain to the body and the body to the brain more and more efficiently. You might remember when your child was a baby, a newborn, their movements seemed very random, right? Their arms wave around, their legs wave around, they can't hold their head up. There's very little voluntary movement that children can do when they're born. But over time, over that first year, they coat those axons with myelin, which allows them more and more control over their bodies. Those messages travel more efficiently and they have more and more control. The interesting thing is that the process of coating those axons, that process of myelination, happens in the same way for all humans. It happens from the top down and from the center out. So you might think back again to your child's development. You might remember when they first were able to hold their head up on their own. That's the myelination of the nerve cells in the area of the neck. And then after that, they were able to push up and hold their chest up off the floor. That's the myelination of the shoulders and going into the arms. Then grasping, that's the myelination starting in their hands. Rolling over is myelinating the torso, so we're moving down the body. Then they get up on all fours and start to crawl. And now the myelination has extended down through their torso and into their legs. And then, of course, when they are able to stand and walk, that process has now extended into their legs and feet. Now, you might say, again, what does this have to do with toileting? Well, a lot of people asked in the Google form, and parents ask all the time, when is my child ready to learn to use the toilet? And when you're talking about physical readiness, about the possibility of learning to voluntarily control all those muscles, the potential for voluntary control is there by the time they're crawling. So by the time they're voluntarily using their legs and their torso for voluntary movement, there is also a potential. Now, I'm not saying that they can do that on command, right? That's a skill that they have to learn, that voluntary control. But that possibility is there. Now, I need to back up just a little bit and talk about why is it that children learned to move their bodies voluntarily? Why have they learned to stand up and walk so easily without really us having to do much other than just walk around them? Children are driven from birth to emulate the adults around them. They are driven to want to copy the actions and activities of the people around them. That's why they learn to talk, simply by other people talking to them and around them. And the same with walking. They want to emulate what the adults around them are doing. So why can't they just learn to toilet like this? Well, the truth is watching someone walk is a much easier thing for a child to do than to watch them use the toilet. In our modern culture, toileting happens behind closed doors. And even if it didn't, it's kind of hard to get a visual of exactly what's going on when someone is using the toilet. So learning to use the toilet, while it involves a similar process of voluntary control of the muscles, it's actually a much trickier process, a lot more challenging for the child to master. So we have to do things a little bit differently than we do with other skills that the child is learning at this age. So we're going to now go through what the process looks like for learning to use the toilet. We've talked about how their body gets ready, but what exactly is the process that children go through as they learn? There are basically 4 stages that children go through in terms of learning to use the toilet. The first one is they have to notice that their body is doing something. They have to recognize elimination while it's happening. Some of you with older children may have seen this kind of recognition in your child. It may mean that they, when they're urinating, they look down and they just notice visually. They just give you that one small cue that they realize something is happening. They may go to touch the area. They may go to grab their diaper or their underpants while they're urinating. And that's another clue that they realize something's happening here. This is interesting. I feel something happening. And that's just a recognition that elimination is taking place. And it's an important step in the process of learning to use the toilet. The next step that comes, they may be in that phase for quite some time where really they're just building up that recognition over and over again. The next step is understanding what it is that toilet is for, recognizing the purpose of that toilet. And that comes through many times sitting on the toilet when nothing happens. So what one thing we're going to talk about a little bit later is just giving a child many opportunities to experience very brief moments of sitting on the toilet, and also to see the adults modeling that for them. So when you're in a home environment, you can definitely, leave that door open if you don't mind. Let them see that sitting on the toilet is something that every adult does. Like I said, they really do like to emulate the people around them. So the more they see other people sitting on the toilet, the more comfortable they're going to be with the idea of sitting on the toilet themselves. So understanding the purpose of that toilet and what we do there is a really important part of the process. Now, once you get to the point where a child knows how to urinate on the toilet, there's going to be a long period of time where you're just where the process is kind of adult driven, where the adult is inviting the child to use the toilet at certain times during the day and hoping that they're able to urinate or produce a bowel movement on that toilet. And in that way, keeping their pants dry and clean and just moving through the day. It's a long stage, that second stage. The next thing that's going to happen in your child's development is they're going to know that they're just about to eliminate. So this process looks something like, I'm about to urinate. I'm urinating, like pretty much that quickly. Like having any kind of notice just a few seconds or a minute before is a big step forward in the process. I'm about to urinate. I'm urinating. I'm about to have a bowel movement, and I'm having a bowel movement. Then there's one final step, which is recognizing that feeling of a full bladder or a full bowel with some advance notice. Like, oh, I think in a little bit I'm going to need to go to the bathroom. And once we've reached that stage, that's when we feel like the toilet learning has come to fruition, and we've had a good process. So that is a lot for a child to learn. And I just want to encourage you as we go through the rest of the explanation of this process to realize that this is something that's going to take some time. That if we want a child to go through this process in a positive way, feeling good about themselves, feeling good about their learning, then we have to be patient and give them time to move through this process at their own pace. And every child's different, right? So every child's going to go through this in a different amount of time. A lot of people were asking the question, how long does it take? Oh, well, that's a big question. And the truth is that every child is different. But I wanted to give you an idea of what those 4 stages look like. And those 4 stages take different amounts of time, but pretty much every child goes through those 4 stages in that order. Now, so we've talked a little bit about that process, and I want to talk now about the fact that when we talk about that process, that going through that process and the way in which the child goes through that process is actually incredibly important. Montessori pedagogy always looks at the process of learning and how it affects the child and prioritizes that over, even and above, the skill itself. So yes, the truth is 99.9999% of human beings, before they enter what we call the second plane of development, which is around the age of 6 begins the second plane of development. So pretty much every child learns in that first plane of development at some point to use the toilet, right? And there are lots of different ways that people can do that. And if somebody has a different way that has worked for them in the past and that works for them now, fantastic. I hope that sometimes we can disagree on things and still have good conversation. But this particular way of going about toilet learning prioritizes the process, because let's think about the things the child is learning at this time. In addition to the skill of toileting, they're building their personality. And this is at a time when they are creating the foundation of the person they're going to become in these first 6 years. So they're building the very basic building blocks of their personality. They're building a relationship with their body. Is my body healthy or sick? Is my body strong or not so strong? Can I get my body to do what I want it to do, or do I have a lot of trouble with that? So building that relationship with their body. And then also building a relationship with simply the idea of learning. What is learning like? This is one of the first things they're going to learn how to do that doesn't happen completely naturally, right? This is a cultural skill. This is something that is specific to the family that they live in, to the culture that they live in. And it's the first time that they're being asked to learn something like this. So it's really going to set the tone for a lot of their learning that comes afterward. So that's why we pay such attention to the process of toileting. Let's talk about some of the components that are integral. Now we're going to go into these in big detail, so don't worry. I'm going to kind of skim over them real quick, and then we're going to go back and go into a lot of detail. But these are some of the things that are really, really key to the process of the child learning to use the toilet. Number one is going to be accessible bathroom setup. So we've got to have a setup in the bathroom that that takes into account the size of the child and the level of motor skills of the child. We really, really want to allow this child to develop independence. When they develop independence, they develop self-confidence, they feel good about themselves, and it also creates feelings of calm. And this is a time when children can be rather volatile at times. And so as much as possible, we want them to feel confident and calm. And the best way to do that with regard to toileting is by having a bathroom setup that is accessible to the child. We want to use cloth underpants. Bye-bye diapers. Sorry, families. Sorry, parents. Diapers are going. When we start the toilet process, we're going to try really hard to connect up the child's body and mind. And the best way to do that is to allow them to experience what happens when I release my bladder. What happens? What does that feel like? What is associated with that? Diapers are so effective these days in wicking moisture away that the child really gets no feedback. They release their bladder whenever they want to, wherever they want to, and there is no bodily feedback for them on what is happening. So we really, when the toileting process begins, we've got to connect that back up. We've got to overcome the disassociation that has happened due to the really effective diapers. In addition to the underpants, we're going to have clothing that promotes independence. Getting in and out of clothing is a huge part of the toileting process. So we're going to talk in a minute about collaborating with your child and helping them learn to dress and undress independently, no matter what their age. Of course, routine trips to the bathroom. And I say at times of transition because we want to get away from this idea of having a clock going where, oh, it's been 20 minutes, here we go back into the bathroom. That causes interruptions and creates a lot of negative associations for the child. They don't want to leave their fun playtime to go sit in the bathroom. That's boring. Nobody wants to leave doing something fun to go do something that that they either don't understand or aren't interested in. So we're going to avoid interrupting the child to go to the bathroom, but we're going to build in a lot of routine trips to the bathroom that are part of daily life where they're not being interrupted from their fun playtimes. And then, of course, we're going to need some patient, consistent adults for this child because this is going to be a process. And children are very, very sensitive to the responses that their adults give them to everything they do. They take it all in. They take in the facial expressions, the little sighs, the eye rolls. They take it all in. And they know when their behavior is causing their adults to have distress. And that can be, on the one hand, that can make them feel very powerful. In fact, it can make them feel uncomfortably powerful to have so much control over the adult's emotions. And it can also frighten them to think that their behavior is having a negative impact on their adults. So we have to be very calm, very patient, and very consistent to provide the routines that the child needs in order to accomplish achieving this skill. So we're going to, again, go into all of that in a little bit more detail as we go. I want to talk for a second about the difference between toilet training, or what I think of as toilet training, and what I think of as toilet learning. Now, there are cultures all over the world that handle toileting in a variety of different ways. In a lot of Western cultures and modern cultures everywhere, parents use a system of toileting that waits for signs of readiness from the child. These might some people suggest waiting until they show an interest in the toilet, like maybe they're walking into the bathroom while you're in there, or maybe some people say you need to wait until they ask, "I want to use the toilet now." There are lots of different things that people say are signs of readiness. Oh, staying dry for long periods of time in their diaper is another thing that some people use. So the idea with toilet training is that you wait for these signs of readiness, and then you have this sort of intense. Some people, talk about potty training in a weekend, or things like that. This kind of intense teaching process where the adult explains the purpose of the toilet, and tells them what the purpose of it is and what they're supposed to do there, and then proceeds to take them into the bathroom every certain amount of time in kind of a rigid schedule. Now, thinking back to those 4 phases, you can just see how it would be really difficult to go through all 4 of those phases in a weekend, right? It's actually pretty impossible. It's almost impossible. Now, I've had plenty of anecdotal stories told to me. Oh, well, we did potty training the weekend and my daughter just learned to use the toilet. Okay, like I said, no matter what process you use, 99.999% of children are gonna learn to use the toilet. Now, uh, most parents who use this method end up in a situation where they're kind of frustrated and they end up resorting to rewards or praise, some joking joviality at the beginning that maybe works in the short term, but not so much in the long term, especially when we get to the point where children are really enjoying asserting their individuality and enjoying saying no to things. That's when things kind of break down with this system, because we end up with a frustrated adult who's now not just using rewards, but also punishments, or a little bit of guilt or even shame to try to manipulate the child into using the toilet. And it's understandable. It's frustrating when everyone says, "Oh no, this is the way to do it," and it doesn't work. So it can be very frustrating for the adult. It's obviously very frustrating for the child as well, because they're not being successful and they do want to please their adults. They really, really do want to please the adults. So again, this process works for a lot of people. In fact, most Western parents use this process and it works. I know I'm a product of this process. A lot of you are probably a product of this process. So you say, what difference does it make? But the thing is although the result of that system is that the child does learn to use the toilet, they learn some other things as well. And some of those things are, they learn that learning is great when I get rewards. Learning is great when I get stickers, when I get candy, when I get screen time. And when I don't get those things, why in the world would I do any of the things you're asking me to do? They also learn that some parts of their body are embarrassing or cause them problems, that their body is problematic. They learn that when people do the joking, "Ooh, you're smelly," and things like that through the toileting process, they get the idea that their body is embarrassing, that their body might even be yucky or disgusting. They get the message that when I make a mistake, it's upsetting to my adults. And even the little sighs and the little again, okay, even little things like that, they pick up on that feedback. And they also get that message that the adults are in charge of my learning and growing, and that I have a lot of control over my adults' emotions, which, like I said earlier, is kind of a scary idea to them. So that's the toilet training process. Again, a lot of people use it. Children end up using the toilet. Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we refer to as the toilet learning process. And the reason we use the word learning is because that verb is the child's verb. And this is a child-centered approach to using the toilet. So we're going to let the child lead us on this process, right? We're going to start when we know the child is developmentally ready to start. Now, I know a lot of you have older children, and don't worry, this process can be started at whatever point you're ready to start. But I'm going to talk just a minute about starting this process when your child is just walking well, or even before, when they're crawling. As soon as they can sit on a potty, you can start this process. Walking well is a nice, easy time to delineate. Okay, we're walking, we're standing, we're going to go into underpants. And you're going to give lots of opportunities to sit on the toilet. If something happens, great. If not, no worries. And then those carefully chosen times are going to be chosen not to interrupt. Again, we're going to talk more in detail about those times in a minute. We're going to move at the child's pace through those 4 stages. And we're going to collaborate a lot of adult back and forth help with independent dressing and undressing. We're going to avoid rewards, punishments. We're going to be very matter of fact, no big deal about the whole thing. The result of this process is the child learns to use the toilet, but they learn a lot of other things too. They learn, I'm in control of my body. This is my job to learn to do this. And my body is good at doing things. They learn that learning new things is hard and that it doesn't always go the way we want, but I can do it. And when things don't go the way I want, my adults have helped me learn the ways to take care of that, to either change my clothes or clean up a puddle of urine. Those are the things that I can take care of those things and fix that when things don't go the way I want. And they learn my adults are here for me when I need them, that I'm being encouraged to do this on my own, but if I need my adults, they're there for me. So that's the difference between toilet training and toilet learning. Now we're going to get into the items that I know you all came for, and that is, what do I buy when I'm ready to start this process? What do I need to have in the environment? So we're going to talk first about the physical environment, and then we're going to talk about the more psychological environment, because that's the trickier part of this, right? We're all pretty okay going and shopping for stuff and getting the right items. It's just how we then approach it from a psychological perspective that can be tricky. So let's talk about toilets. This is the number one thing, right? So we are going to look for a situation with the toilet where the child can sit on the toilet without being scared of falling in, and where their feet are flat on the floor. It's really important that the child not have to rely on holding on to the adult or the adult holding on to them while they're sitting on the toilet. So that could be a floor potty. Floor potties are great to start out with, especially like this little one-piece floor potty, one piece of molded plastic. So easy to keep clean, really comfortable to sit on. The child can have their feet flat, can have their legs spread out as wide as they want to, and feel really independent in sitting down. And when they don't want to sit there anymore, they can get up and not feel like they're trapped on the toilet, right? The 2 toilets on the side, if you cannot manage a floor potty, making the adult toilet accessible is going to require some steps. It's going to require handles, so that they can climb up those steps independently, with some collaboration at first, depending on their age and their motor skills, but eventually climbing up independently. One thing you want to keep in mind is that step where the child is right up against the toilet seat. It needs to be wide enough or deep enough that the child can walk up the step facing the toilet and then turn fully around without danger. So it needs to be pretty deep so they can walk up there, turn their body around, and then lower themselves down without being afraid of falling or without the danger of them getting injured in any way. They are also going to need, if you're using an adult toilet, something that goes on top of the adult toilet seat that makes the hole smaller. So that's just a potty seat. You can get you can get some that fold up and you can put in a diaper bag. There are some that are more permanent that actually attach to your toilet seat that can raise and lower just like the toilet seat does. Lots of options on that. But basically the main idea is to have a stable way for the child to eventually independently get onto and off of the toilet, because they feel good. They feel confident and calm when they feel like they can do things. So that's what we want with the toilet. Ooh, did I just stop sharing my screen? Sorry, everybody. Okay. So we've done that. What's next? Oh, yes, dressing and undressing. So again, dressing and undressing is a big part of this, and we're going to need a place for the child to sit comfortably where they can take off their clothes and then put them back on when they're finished. The first, when a child is first starting the toileting process, they need to be completely naked from the waist down when they're sitting on the toilet, because they need to be able to spread their legs as wide apart as they need to. And if they've got their pants around their ankles, They can't do that. And it's not a comfortable way to sit. It's not really even safe for them to sit that way. So they need to be able to get their pants completely all the way off and then sit on the toilet and then get off the toilet and get dressed again. So that's going to require a stool or a little chair, something where they can sit to take their push their pants down, sit down, push them the rest of the way off, and then also sit to lift their legs up and put them into the holes of their pants. This is again going to require a lot of collaboration at first from the adults. And the way the collaboration works is at first the adult is doing most of the work, helping them dress, but they're doing it in a place where the child is eventually going to be able to do it themselves. So the child's sitting on the little stool or chair, and the adult is kneeling down in front of them and helping them. Eventually, the child's going to start to try to take on that work on their own, and the adult's going to kind of step back and let them be independent and then re-engage, as needed. You just kind of have to monitor and observe your child and their level of independence. But it's really important to have a place for them to sit. I usually say like 6 to 10 inches off the ground should be the seat of that stool or chair, depending on your child's size. So toilet and stools, really important. Let's see, did I get all those? Where are we? Oh yeah, and a little mirror is nice too. It helps them to be able to see themselves, to see, oh, I didn't quite get my pants all the way up. Oh, there's the sleeve of my shirt. I can see it now, get it on. So it's really nice to have a mirror where they can see themselves to get dressed. Now we're going to talk about those underpants. We use cotton training pants. I think these are Gerber. You can get them on Amazon, you can get them at Walmart, you can usually get them at Target. They are thicker in the middle, so they do absorb some amount of the urine. And there are several reasons we do this. I talked earlier about connecting up the mind and body, letting them know that when I relax those sphincters and urinate, the consequence is my pants are wet. And most children, although many children don't even notice at first that their pants are wet, that's okay, that's a process. But a lot of them do notice, and when they do start to notice, they start to not like it. And so they do start to want, it does kind of help them feel like they want to start to have pants that are dry longer during the day. It's not something that you have to talk about with them. Like, don't you want to have dry pants? No, they'll recognize that on their own. They'll go through that process. But the other thing about these cotton underpants is that it allows the adult to immediately notice that the child has urinated. When a child's in a diaper, you don't know when they've urinated and when they haven't. So when they've got underpants on, you can see immediately that they're wet. And the best way to help them associate the act of urinating with the bathroom is to notice when it's happening or right after, and go with them to the bathroom and say, oh, your pants are wet, I see. Let's go into the bathroom. This is where we take care of that. Help them get the wet clothes off, allow them a chance to sit on the potty, even if it's just briefly. They're not going to do anything because they've just urinated, but let them sit. Start to build those little associations little by little. And the best way to do that is to have them in underpants so that you can see as soon as they have urinated and so that they can feel it themselves. And then a couple other items of clothing. You're really going to want to avoid anything like tights or blue jeans that have snaps and zippers, anything with buttons, anything that is going to present an obstacle to that child being able to quickly push their pants down, get them off, and go sit on that toilet. Remember those 4 stages of development. There comes a point where they think, I'm about to go to the bathroom. And if they run to the bathroom and they have a potty there that's at their level that they can easily get onto, they can push those pants down real fast and sit on that potty and have success independently at a very young age. If they're wearing a dress and tights, if they're wearing overalls, if they're wearing a onesie, they're going to run to the bathroom, and they're not going to know that the reason they didn't have success was because of their clothing. They're going to think, oh, I missed again. Oh, well. We want to eliminate those feelings of not having success. We want to eliminate those as much as possible. We've got to eliminate as many obstacles to this child having success as we possibly can. And a big one is going to be clothing. So put away the fancy clothes for a while, get out the sweatpants, the shorts, the ones that have nice stretchy elastic. Get out the t-shirts that are kind of short. The shorter the t-shirt, the better. If the t-shirt's real long, they'll sit on the potty and it'll be under their bottom and it'll get wet. So you just want to eliminate as many obstacles to that you have to success, and clothing is a big one. So it's really easy. Just go buy a whole bunch of sweatpants and t-shirts. So another big part of toileting is hand washing. A lot of people asked about hand washing in the Google form, and especially right now, right? Hand washing is a sensitive topic. It's a really important, it's always been important, but it's especially important now. So what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to make the sink accessible, because we want hand washing to just be part of the routine. They absorb these routines pretty easily. I do this, and then I do this, and then I do this. And if it's repeated every time, then it just becomes a habit. But we can't do the hand washing if they can't access the sink. Again, it's not comfortable to have an adult pick you up and hold you under the armpits while you're trying to wash your hands. That doesn't feel good. It doesn't promote feelings of independence. And so when a child is associating hand washing with something negative, like being physically uncomfortable or feeling at the whim of the adult, it's gonna create a negative association to hand washing. So you're gonna want to allow them to be independent. You need to model hand washing. So at the beginning, you'll be collaborating with them. You'll be washing your hands right along with the child and going through the steps of washing hands. A lot of people love to have a little song. You know, there's the happy birthday 2 times. There's a lot of different songs. If you have a favorite song, 20 seconds of hand washing, looking at the bubbles, pointing out all the fun things. And then allowing the child to spend some time with hand washing. A lot of people, wash hands, get it done, and get out. Well, running water is a really interesting thing for a child to have access to. And at the beginning of having access to the sink, they're going to want to do it a lot. And my suggestion is to let that play out for a few days, because once they realize that the access to the sink is not going to be taken away, a lot of times they'll give up their time at the sink a little more easily, knowing that, oh, I can come back to this later if I want to. I suggest turning the water pressure down underneath the sink. There's valves underneath the sink where you can change. You can turn the hot water way down so that it doesn't get too hot. And you can turn even the cold side down so that it's just coming out a trickle, so that it's not being wasted. Sometimes children end up making a big mess with the sink, exploring the way water moves. In those cases, it's okay to set a limit and say, oh, I see we're making a big mess here. That's too much. I'm going to go ahead and turn this off, and we're going to go out of the bathroom. It's okay to set that limit and be consistent about that. But if they're just exploring the bubbles and the water and it's not causing a big issue, I would allow that to play out when they first are learning to have access to the sink. You can see several different ways of giving children that access. It's going to depend on your setup at home and your child's motor abilities. This one on the far left is probably the safest option for a young child. The one in the middle, probably for an older child who has good balance. But somehow getting them access to that sink is going to be really helpful. And then access to where the clothing is going to be stored. We need a place to put that soiled clothing. So having a laundry basket either in the bathroom or in their room that is accessible to them, so that they can participate in the process of knowing where to put soiled clothing, and then having access to their clean clothes. I don't recommend giving them access to every article of clothing. I think that would end up in a big mess pretty quickly, but giving them a few choices of pants and a couple choices of shirts and a few underpants is a great way to build up their ability to make choices. They have to all be acceptable choices, right? You don't want to put out a swimsuit as an option in December, but giving them options that are okay with you and letting them make those choices themselves is very empowering, and it's a good way to build up that to answer the child's need for independence during the day. And then the final thing I want to talk about is cleaning up. There's going to be a lot of cleanup. If you follow the child and go through this process and take the time that it takes and have the child in underpants consistently, there's going to be cleanup. So you're going to want to have towels to soak up puddles of urine, or maybe even a mop accessible to the adult, and and something for the child to use. And then maybe a little caddy, depending on the age of the child. You might have a little spray bottle with some water that has like a couple drops of dish soap to help clean up a spill, or excuse me, not a spill, but a puddle of urine. You want to keep obviously any hazardous cleaning materials way, way out of the child's reach, and use those when the child is not around. We're going to talk in a minute about the way people respond to urine and bowel movements. And a lot of people get really worried about the germ aspect of urine and bowel movements. And the truth is that when a child urinates in a diaper or has a bowel movement in a diaper, that the product of elimination is against their skin. So they've already technically touched the urine and the bowel movements. So it's not something to be afraid of. It is definitely something to clean up. But it's nice to involve your child in this process. Again, it helps them to feel like this is just a part of life. It's not something to be afraid of or to be worried about or to be anxious about. It's just something that happens. And when we have a puddle of urine on the floor, we clean it up. If you really worry a lot about the children touching urine, that you can still find ways for the child to participate. They can bring you the materials. They can bring you the towel. They can bring you the caddy. They can hold things for you and hand them to you while you're cleaning up. So no matter what your perspective on that is, there are always ways that you can collaborate with your child in the process of cleaning up when there's urine on the floor or a bowel movement or something like that. Okay, I'm going to throw a monkey wrench into the plans because we need to talk about the psychological aspect of toileting, right? Because in Western society, we wait quite some time before we introduce the concept of toileting, right? I've talked about doing it right when they're learning to walk. And one of the reasons is to avoid the crisis of self-affirmation. And this is something we talk about in Montessori pedagogy. It's a time around the age of 2.5, somewhere around that time, where children really come to an understanding of their separateness from their adults, right? So they have this one part of their development that's telling them, be like the grown-ups, be like the grown-ups, be just like the grown-ups. And all of a sudden, they've got another aspect of their development that's saying, you are separate, you are independent, be your own person. They're telling you to go that way, but you know what? You can go this other way. So when we wait until 2.5 to start these new routines, it's a big opportunity for the child to demonstrate their individuality and demonstrate going against the adult agenda. So what are we going to do about that? The truth is that much of the child's daily activity is outside their control, right? We're going to the grocery store. We're leaving the park. It's time to go home. We're moving to a new house. We're bringing home a new baby. These are all things that children have no control over. And although they might like to express their individuality in these situations, if we're going to the grocery store, we're going to the grocery store. If we're leaving the park, even if you don't want to leave the park, the adult can pick you up and carry you to the car and you can leave the park, right? So children are very curious about situations in which they have the final say, and they're always looking for situations in which they have the final say. So this is why we get into power struggles with the child. And you're going to recognize this list of things because the areas where children can very effectively defy the adult agenda, there are 3 main areas. And those 3 areas are swallowing food. Who has the final say in swallowing food? The child does. Who has the final say in relaxing and falling asleep? The child does. And of course, who has the final say in relaxing those sphincters and releasing urine or bowel movements? The child does. So in case you were ever wondering why every parent has power struggles over these 3 things, it's because this is where the child has the final say. And although this period does not have to last forever, the children do mature. They gain more control over their impulses. They're very impulsive at this age, and it's natural for them to be impulsive, but they do gain more control. And they do have a part of them that's telling them to be like the adults, and they do want to please their adults. However, if there is not enough opportunity for independence in the child's daily routines, if there's not an opportunity for them to make choices in their daily routines, if the adult has a very intense and interesting response when the child goes against the adult agenda, these are all things that are going to prolong what is a natural and can be a fairly brief period of development that will go on and become, and can even become, a part of the child's personality if it's a serious enough situation. So what do we have to do? The adult has to work really, really hard to overcome their worries and their fears. They have to trust in the child's development, and they have to let go of their agendas for eating, sleeping, and toileting, which is what we're talking about today. Because provided an accessible environment and a calm and patient adult, the child will learn to use the toilet independently. When their bowel and bladder are full, they will do it. They really will. So let's go into depth a little bit more on this psychological aspect. I know we're getting close to question and answer time, so I am going to stop talking eventually and answer your questions. But let's go through the psychological aspects of toileting. And the first one is order and routine. Children love to be able to predict what's coming next. They love it when the same thing happens every day. They really, really do. That's why they want you to read them the same book over and over and over, because they say, ooh, on the next page, the dog goes for a walk. And then you turn the page and they're like, yes, I knew it. I knew the dog was going to go for a walk on this page. So it fills them with such great feelings of, I am smart, I am capable, I know what's happening around me. And the same thing happens with routines during the day. If the same thing happens pretty much every day, they're going to be filled with a lot of calm feelings of independence and capability. So what you want to do is you want to have a lot of order and routine around toileting. And children this age don't tell time. They don't know what 20 minutes is or 30 minutes or an hour. So when you say, oh, it's been 20 minutes, we got to go sit on the toilet, that means nothing to them. What they do recognize pretty well is what happens. What are the events of the day? So if you can build toileting routines into the events of the day, you're going to have a lot more success in them feeling calm about going into the bathroom. So what I find is that the best thing to do is use the times of transition. So before and after eating, before and after sleeping, before and after going outside, before and after riding in the car. Any of those big transition moments during the day are perfect times to build in trips to the bathroom. You might need to build in some other times during the morning, especially at the beginning, to go sit on the toilet, but you really, really need to work hard to avoid asking a child to leave something that they're doing that's interesting, playing outside, playing with a puzzle inside, snuggling with mom or dad. You want to really avoid taking them away from something they're enjoying and asking them to go and sit on the toilet instead. So you really want to try to build those times into the routine of transition, because it's really easy to say, yeah, we're going to go outside just as soon as we go and use the toilet. Oh, yep, we're going to go eat a snack just as soon as we're finished here in the bathroom. It's really much, much easier to get them to comply, because I know a lot of you are asking, what do I do when they say no? And the answer is don't ask. Don't ask them if they need to go to the bathroom, right? So that's another big part of the invitation to go to the bathroom. Is it's not really an invitation like a yes or no invitation. It's really just a statement. Oh, it's time to go visit the toilet. Come on, we'll go together. And the more you make it a joyful thing and not a I'm scared that they're going to say no, the more easily they're going to comply with your request, especially if they've built up some feelings of independence and capability in the bathroom. Because if you ask a child if they need to go to the bathroom, they're going to tell you no. And the reason they're going to say no is not necessarily because they don't need to go. It's possible that they don't know what it feels like to need to go to the bathroom yet. It's also possible that they just find it really interesting the way you respond when they say, no, they don't need to go to the bathroom. And usually when you ask them if they need to go to the bathroom, you don't really mean, do you need to go to the bathroom? You mean, it's time to go to the bathroom. So just be frank and be real with them in terms of your terminology of inviting them to go to the bathroom at those times. When you build those in, it's just, oh, it's that time. We are about to get in the car and go to the park, but of course we're going to go use the bathroom first. Here we go. And just being confident and having some momentum in your parenting in that way is helpful. Building independence into your daily routines is going to be, is really important. So again, collaborating in dressing and undressing. Again, it starts with the adult doing most of the work, but you're going to be really looking for those times where the child maybe reaches for their pants, where the child tries to take control of a particular step. And at that moment, you're going to withdraw your energy. You're not going to walk away or abandon them, but you're just going to withdraw your energy a little bit and let them take the lead in that step. And then when it gets kind of overwhelming again, you're going to step back in and, well, let's try this. I'll pull on the right side and you pull on the left side, and just see where that balance is of assistance. Because over time, the adult doing most of the work at the beginning, the child doing a little, and over time, that's just gonna very slowly over time shift to where the child is doing more. Um, One other thing to think about in terms of independence is that you have to meet the child where they are every day. Just because they put their shoes on independently yesterday doesn't mean they're going to be able to do it today. I always use the analogy of cooking dinner. I know how to cook dinner. I'm perfectly capable of cooking dinner. Some days when I get home from a long day at work, like today, I don't feel like cooking dinner. And it's not because I can't. And if somebody came into the kitchen and said, why aren't you cooking dinner? You know how to cook dinner. You cooked dinner yesterday. You're very good at cooking dinner. Come on, cook dinner. I'm not going to have a positive reaction to that. So you just want to meet that child where they are. If yesterday they put their shoes on and today they just can't do it, the best thing to do is just to get back into that collaboration mode and say, okay, well, let's see. I'll hold the back open while you push your foot in. Things like that. So just try to be as collaborative as you can, and understand that the process is going to be a 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of process. We want to be sure that we are encouraging intrinsic motivation. So we're going to avoid rewards. We're going to avoid punishments. We're going to make this a matter of fact process that is neither something to have a big glittery party over, but it's also not something to get angry about. It's just something that we're going to learn to do. When we worry a lot about rewards and punishments, we put the focus on the adult's emotional state and the adult's response to the child's learning. When we want the child to be focusing on developing good habits and doing what they need to do at a pace at which they feel comfortable doing it. We don't want them to feel like their learning is a reflection on the adult, or that it's somehow affecting the adult's emotional state. So we got to avoid those rewards, avoid punishments. It's okay to have a little smile and a little excitement over, oh, you did it, you urinated in the toilet, it's really cool, we can't wait to tell grandma. But we just want to avoid big things, or doing a lot of stickers or screen time or candy or anything like that, where it's something that the child starts to need in order to continue making progress. You'll notice I was using a lot of scientific terminology. For whatever reason, our modern culture hesitates to refer to body parts with correct terminology. And that lack of understanding of our bodies leads to a lot of misunderstandings. It leads to embarrassment and even shame about things that are just normal human functions. And when children feel like their bodies might be silly or embarrassing or shameful, that sets a child up for the possibility of future victimization and all kinds of other things that you really don't want. You want a child to be able to name all the parts of their body with scientific terminology. You want them to be able to talk about urination and bowel movements, about their penis and their anus and their vulva. You want them to be able to know what those parts are called. So you might have to go sit in a room and just say those words a bunch of times without getting embarrassed, so that you can reflect to them that your body is not embarrassing, that their body is not embarrassing, and it's nothing to be ashamed about. Because that's really something that you want to have as a foundational understanding of their body. Toileting can bring up a lot of issues for people. It can bring up things from their past that they might need to work through in order to give a positive understanding of this process to their child. And if that's the case, I encourage you to explore that and to do the self-reflection that you need, so that those feelings don't get passed down to your child. The acceptance of mistakes is really important. This process is not a straight line. A lot of people use the word accident, which, I mean, it's kind of it's not the biggest deal in the world, but I think of an accident as something that was caused by carelessness, right? I wasn't really paying attention and I accidentally hurt someone, or I accidentally damaged something, and I need to apologize for it. A child's bodily functions are not anything that they should feel apologetic about. It's just a part they're learning. And as they learn, there are going to be times when they make it to the bathroom and times when they don't. And it's not an accident. It's simply, there's urine in your pants. You urinated in your pants. Let's go in the bathroom and change clothes. It's not something that requires an apology, right? So um, sometimes our language reflects our thinking, and that's the only reason I say try to avoid the word accident. Try to avoid any words that tell the child that what they're doing is wrong or inadequate in any way. It's just, oh, today you had urine in your pants. Let's go change. It's not something to get real emotional about those mistakes. And then finally, the acceptance of negative emotions. This is a big change for your child. They used to be able to eliminate anywhere they felt like it at any time they wanted. And you are now asking them to completely upend everything they understand about their body by asking them to use the toilet. There's a very good possibility they're going to have some negative feelings about that change. And the best way to move through those negative feelings is to fully accept them, to embrace them, to see that as a moment when you can connect with your child and let them know that even when they're feeling really unhappy about something, that's a time when you are going to be there for them. So if they're unhappy about the toileting, something along the lines of, you really wish that we could go back to wearing diapers. Yeah, it was easier then, wasn't it? Yep. Oh, this is hard, but we can do this together. How can I help today? What can I do? Do you need a hug? Do you want me to go with you into the bathroom? Those are the kinds of connecting moments that you can have with them when they're feeling really negative about the toilet. Even an experience like, you just cannot go in and use the toilet today. I see that. Okay, well, if you get urine in your pants and you want some help changing clothes, come and let me know. That's okay. That's okay. We'll try again tomorrow. Those are the kinds of responses that you can have to those negative emotions that create an environment of acceptance and love, rather than that power struggle of, you're going to use the toilet. I just want to close by saying, oh, I got those out of order, didn't I? Oh, well. Just want to close by saying that your child experience with toileting really is going to affect some foundational aspects of their learning and their personality development. And I hope that this conversation today has helped you to maybe prioritize the process of toilet learning. I'm ready to answer questions, and I'm going to turn my screen off or stop screen sharing. And there we go. And go through a few of the questions from the Google group, from the Google form. And then I'll open it up to questions that maybe have been put in the chat. One question that was asked a couple of times was about being afraid, that their child was afraid of the toilet. And that can be understandable. Again, like I said, it's a big change. Steps back. It's okay to say, you know what, we're going back to diapers for a little bit, and we'll try this underpants, this toilet learning thing again, with a different attitude toward it. Maybe a slower pace, maybe a little bit more patience and a little bit more compassion from the adult. There may be like a triggering moment. A lot of children are really scared of those automatic flushers. My niece actually had a really negative experience with an automatic flushing toilet, wouldn't go near a public toilet for a long time. So there are little things like that where some fear can set in, and you might need to take a step back and then readdress it after a few weeks. If it's a small fear, if it's something you feel like could be helped with just the adult presence, or maybe experiencing again the process in the bathroom at a slower pace, maybe the child just spends some time coming in with you to the bathroom and not sitting on the toilet. Maybe they start by sitting on the toilet with their clothes on, and they're not ready to sit on the toilet naked yet. Little things like that where you can ease them into the process at a slower pace might help with fears. Another question was, how can I teach my child to wipe themselves, and when should they be able to do that on their own? And again, this is going to be a gross motor coordination thing. Different children progress at a different rate in terms of their coordination. I mean, it's kind of tricky. You can't see back there, right? So you got to reach way behind. You can't see what's going on. My my suggestion is at the beginning that that you start. You say, I'll wipe your bottom first, and then when I'm done, then you can have a turn wiping your bottom, and let them do the best they can. Once you see that they're physically getting to where they need to get in order to wipe themselves, that's when you can start stepping back and allowing them to take on more ownership of getting themselves clean, in terms of wiping their bottom. So that's my advice on that. Again, every child's different in terms of their abilities in that area. Another question was, is there a difference between starting girls and starting boys? And this is anecdotal on my part. I've been doing this for about 15 years. And overall, I mean, every child is different. I've had boys learn like that, and I've had girls take a really long time. In general, I do find that the process for boys takes a little longer. I have no idea what that is all about. I just have noticed that statistically, sometimes boys take a little bit longer to get to that process where they notice while they're urinating. Like sometimes even getting to that point takes a little bit longer for boys. And then they stay at the process of knowing what to do on the toilet, but not knowing beforehand. They stay at that stage for sometimes a little bit longer. Again, everybody's different. I've had girls take a really long time, and I've had boys take a very short time. Just depends on the child. But it's interesting that statistically, that's what I've found. What about toileting when we are traveling? Toileting can be tricky when you're traveling because it's a lot of changes to the routine, and that can cause some bumps in the road. So you need to be really observant of where your child is in terms of independence, and maybe take a step back on demands regarding sitting on the toilet if they seem really unsettled about it. My favorite travel item is the folding toilet seat. It unfolds and sits on top of the toilet seat and creates that smaller hole that they can sit on. So having one of those in your diaper bag so that they can sit comfortably. Now you can't usually bring a step stool with you, so you probably are going to have to lift them up and put them on the toilet. But that little folding toilet seat is super handy when you're traveling. Also, if you don't want those automatic flushing toilets to go off while your child is sitting there, take a pad of sticky notes and put that in your diaper bag, and you can stick a sticky note right on top of the sensor. And while your child's sitting on the toilet, it won't go off. Get your child down, help them get dressed, let them exit the stall, then pull the sticky note off, and it'll flush, and your child will be farther away. Makes it a little less scary, those loud flushing toilets. And then one more that I saw that was a frequent question was basically how do I keep from getting frustrated, right? And it is hard, and I'm not going to deny that there are going to be moments of frustration for any adult that's going through this process. If you have brand new carpet, if you have a brand new sofa, you may want to come up with some alternatives to the normal process, right? This is ideal for an environment that has wood floors or tile floors. There are these great things called puppy pads that are big pieces of absorbent material that you can put in different places that will absorb urine, so that if your child's sitting on the sofa, if they're sitting on the puppy pad, then if they urinate and they get wet, it goes onto the puppy pad and it doesn't get on your sofa. Those are great for car seats as well. There's also rubberized flannel that you can buy at the fabric store in various sizes that you can put on things that absorbs urine. So yeah, so make the accommodations you need to at the house. And if it becomes a situation where you are very, very frustrated, just like if the child is overly afraid, I would say take a couple steps back. What you don't want is to get into a situation where you feel like you're constantly having a power struggle, constantly, you know, coming up against that connected parent-child relationship, and having a separation there. You want to feel like you're connected to your child, and if that means we're putting diapers back on for a couple of weeks so that mom and dad can calm down and feel normal for a little while, and then we'll try again when everybody's feeling more patient. It's okay. That's okay. I want to encourage everybody to have patience and compassion for their child during this process, but also to have a lot of patience and compassion for themselves, because it is hard. It's hard, and you have to be kind to yourself in addition to being kind to your child. That was the basic tenor of a lot of the questions. Hopefully, a lot of the other questions were answered in the presentation. But Teresa, do you want to feed me any other questions that came up in the chat as we went through?
Yes, Molly, we have a question from Alex and Brett. They're asking a couple other questions. What about if we take our son to swim lessons and they require a swim diaper? And number two, what about nighttime training? Should that be kept separate from this?
Great, great questions. If they require a swim diaper, put them in a swim diaper. I mean, when you go places where maybe they don't, the people there have no experience with this kind of toilet learning, I find it's best not to push it, because then if the child does get wet, they're going to get a really unpleasant response from the adults in that environment, and you don't want that. So it's okay if you say, oh, well, while we're at swim, we wear a swim diaper. While we're at the gym nursery, you wear a pull-up. And then when we leave the gym nursery, we go back into underpants. It's also great to try to educate other adults about the process, but you really, what you want to avoid is a situation where you talk these people into it and then something happens and they have a really, really negative reaction in front of your child. So I would say just put them in a swim diaper. It's not going to hurt anything. As for nighttime training, it is kind of a separate process. It does take longer. Depending on how heavy a sleeper your child is, that's going to affect the process. I would say that if you start to think your child's ready for going without diapers at night or going without a pull-up at night, that you avoid water right before bed. If they express a desire to have something, maybe a drink, or you can try to substitute like some cheese or a cracker or something like that instead of water at bedtime, so that their last drink of water is like an hour or so before bed, one trip to the toilet before bed, and then go to sleep. The truth is that children don't really usually urinate in their sleep. What happens is they come out of that deep sleep state up to a little bit of a higher awareness level in terms of their brain waves. They urinate in that slightly more awake state, and then they fall back asleep almost immediately. So if you're able to be present for that child, right, usually it happens at nap time first, because you can kind of be aware of what they're doing, and as soon as their little eyes start to flutter open after their nap, go ahead and gently but for real, help them get up and get to the toilet. That's a lot of times the first time they're going to have a successful chance to urinate on the potty, because their bladder's full usually. They're not really in a state of wanting to try to resist you. They're just kind of waking up. You can sit them on the potty. The urine just kind of comes out because they're pretty relaxed, and that's when you can say, "Yes, that's what we do on the toilet. You're urinating. That's it." But in terms of nighttime, if you go a lot of nights where they're getting soaking wet, I say go back to the pull-ups for a little while and give them some more time. Like I said, especially for those really heavy sleepers, it's going to take a little bit longer for them. Puppy pads are also great. You can put them underneath the sheets, so that it's pretty easy to kind of take everything off the bed in the morning if it's wet, and redo the sheets, or in the middle of the night or anything like that, if that's what happens.
There's another question for you, Molly. If we want to take a break from potty training at home, but at school they are potty training, is that sending mixed messages?
It's definitely easier if everybody is doing the same thing, right? All of this is going to happen faster if everywhere the child goes, the response to toileting and the routines are the same. However, if you, because of frustration or just because of the child being more, children save up their most their most strong behaviors, their strongest emotional reactions. They save those for their parents because they feel safe expressing, kind of falling apart. They feel safe falling apart for the parents. So a lot of times children will be really super cool with using the toilet at school, but at home, they're really feeling like they can express all their negative feelings about this with the parents. So if the parents are really frustrated, or the child expressing so much negativity that you just feel like you need a break, it's okay to do that while they continue working with the child at school. I would definitely say maybe sit down with that teacher, say, what are you guys doing? How are you doing those invitations? When are you taking my child to the toilet? Try to get more information from them about what's working at school so that you can do your best to implement that at home. But no, it's completely okay to take a step back. Again, you want to make sure that that you continue to feel like you and your child are on the same team. You never want to feel like it's the child versus the parent. Like these are two separate teams, and I just want to make sure I win. And the child's like, no, I want to make sure I win. We want the child and the adult to walk this journey side by side together on the same team. And when it starts to feel like that's not happening, then we need to rethink the process. And it's okay to do that while they continue with their routine at school.
Have another question. My child won't tell me he needs to go. Does the underwear method really work? We tried for 3 weeks and it was a mess that was sent to me.
Oh, wow. So no underwear at all. So bare bottom. I've heard a lot of people have success with bare bottom at home. I mean, if you have success with that, great. But if it's causing a problem, I say put underpants on. Again, you think about those 4 stages, and there's that stage where they know what to do on the toilet. You take them at those times of transition. They may know right before they go, or they may not. But they may not know with a good enough with a long enough advance notice to get to the bathroom. And it's okay for them to stay at that stage for a long time, sometimes months. They spend months at that stage. But as long as you just keep those routines going, still being really chill about it, don't ask them a lot of questions. Do you need to go? Do you need to go? Do you need to go? I would avoid that question completely. Just keep doing the routine. The child will probably let you know when they know, because what they'll do is they'll say, I need to go to the bathroom. And or they won't tell you that. They'll just run to the bathroom. That's how you know that they know. You don't need to ask. In fact, asking, it's kind of a lot of pressure. And sometimes, again, children at this age there's a part of their development that tells them to resist the adult agenda. So if you ask them if they need to go and they say no, there's a good chance that they just said no because they just wanted to see what would happen if they said no. Yeah, so just let them stay at that stage of you being in charge of those transition times going into the bathroom, and eventually they will get to the point. If they're not going to not get there, they're going to get there. Just take some children longer than others.
I have not received any more questions, Molly, and I think that's also true for our Facebook live stream. I do. With that, I think I'd like to thank everyone who has participated tonight. We got a lot of thank yous and compliments to this webinar being really, really informative. Kudos to you, Molly. I do want to extend, if after this session you go, oh, I should have asked this, you can still send us questions, and you can email us the questions at hello@wonderlandmontessori.com. I'm going to type that email address in the chat window so that you have that information. Also, I've been advised by Shannon that this video is being recorded and will be available via Wonderland's Facebook page. So if you want to re-listen to Molly and get all the tricks and tips, it will be available via Facebook. With that, we don't want to keep you any longer. Thank you so much for your participation and your engagement with us. If you enjoyed this webinar and you have suggestions for future topics, let us know too. Send that email to hello@wonderlandmontessori.com. We would love to hear from you. We would love to keep holding such webinars with you guys. And with that, I bid you adieu. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.